And we will go ahead and start this work session. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to actually get some understanding just how this planning and zoning works, and to be able to have some discussions on how we look at the actual comp plan as well as zoning and also anything else that is needed. You have an agenda before you, and we'll follow that agenda. And so that being said, item number 2 is the welcome and introductions. On introduction, if you would, we're going to go around and everybody will introduce themselves and tell us how long you may have been on serving the public in your position. So I'll start. I'm Bernie Jenkins. I'm the mayor for the city of Georgetown. This is right now my 3rd year in this being in this position, and I'll start down here at the end. Mr. Minke, if you will start on your end down there, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Kim Minke. I'm new to the City Council just since January, but I have been participating as an executive board member on the comp plan for the last several comp plans that we've done here in the community as a representative from the business
Thank you.
area.
Mr. Garrett?
Good afternoon. My name is Dwan Garrett. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is my 2nd term, so I think this is my 7th year, I think.
Hi, my name is Willow Hambrick, and this is my 3rd term on City Council, and I'm on the Fire Committee and the Interlocal Committee.
Mr. Mifflin?
I'm Charlie Mifflin. I'm chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission this year. I'm in my 2nd term, and in December will be my 8th and final year on the commission.
Right, next.
My name is Melissa Adair. I'm Sadieville representative on the Planning and Zoning Commission in about 5 or 6 months now.
Right. Ms. Mitchell?
I'm Tammy Lesby Mitchell, and this is my 3rd city council term.
Mr. Vest?
My name is David Vest. This is my 2nd term on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think it's about 7 years like the one, I believe.
Mr. Stone?
My name's Todd Stone. I am in my 4th term as city council member, serving the city of Georgetown.
Mr. James Stone?
James Stone. I'm on my 3rd term, I think it is. I spoke for another thereabout, and I'm on P&Z, recommended by the county and the city judge.
Ms. Catfield?
I'm Justin Canfield. This is my 1st term on
Ms. Sames?
Georgetown Sames, and I've had 21 years of public service. 1 term as mayor, and then the rest of it serving as commissioner.
Yeah, Mr. Green, that's your name. That's why we put it there. So, having you in class, I know you have where you all located. Mr. Green?
Greg Green, 1st term on planning and zoning. I believe we're going into my probably 2.5 years maybe at that. So, okay.
Mr. Hampton?
Greg Hampton, 3rd term on City Council. Previously had been on Georgetown Board of Adjustments for 8 years and Georgetown Scott County Planning and Zoning for 8 years, and just served on the steering committee for the last comp update.
All right, Mr. Crisp?
Michael Crisp. I'm a 1st term city council member, several years with Board of Adjustment, and prior to that, and I'm on the traffic and fire committees.
All right, I think we want to pass the mic. So we have a mic here. We want to, if we can get that mic, we want to pass it. So those who are here,
Just when they're speaking, if they can pass the mic so the
Okay.
live stream catches it. Moving
got it.
forward.
That's perfect. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so going forward from there, I'm going to do next on item 3, statement of goals and objectives, and that. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Holden Fleming, who is the director of the Planning Commission, will come on up and Planning and Zoning and take it from there. Thank you.
Okay. Council members, Honorable Mayor, Planning Commission members. I'll tell you guys, I'm kind of excited. This is a great room of people we have here representing the city of Georgetown. And so I've got just a couple things that I want to talk over very briefly But mostly, I believe that it's my intention to help facilitate communication and conversation between the city council as well as the planning commission. And so I only want to talk long enough to get out of the way and let you guys kind of get to work on some of these issues. And so, yes, to take just a moment to review the goals and objectives. The goals and objectives are a kind of and you should have copies of these in front of you. It's a very important document. This was adopted in January of 2023. We are required to update this document every 5 years, and it's supposed to be reflective of the goals of the city of Georgetown. The city of Georgetown votes on that, and then that comes back to the Planning Commission, and we go ahead and utilize these goals and objectives to then flush out the rest of a comprehensive plan, which we'll talk about here in a second. So just an overview of these goals and objectives. There's 9 chapters: community forum, infrastructure, public facilities, heritage, housing, human services, environment, economic growth, and transportation. Within those 9 chapters, we have 33 major goals and objectives that are set out that the community has identified as very important things that we want to pursue. And then underneath those 33 major objectives and goals, there's 123 different sub-goals and objectives. The idea behind all of this is if we want to get to a destination, we've got to kind of lay out a roadmap on how we're going to get there. And so when we look at these chapters, these are very broad, overarching topics. And then as we look at those major objectives and then sub-objectives, we get kind of more honed in on exactly what action we need to take to get to the city of Georgetown to where it says it wants to be. And I think that's kind of, I think that's one of the reasons why we've decided to have this meeting here tonight. The goals and objectives, like I said, were adopted in January of 2023. We're a couple years into this 5-year cycle. We're required to update it every 5 years. So the process started in 2022. We will start this process again in 2027. But in the meantime, do these goals and objectives, are they still pointing us in the direction that we want to go? And then specifically, what action items does the Planning Commission need to be focused on in this kind of interim period between now and 2027? I'd like to just pause there. Is there any particular chapter? Is there any particular goal or objective where you'd like to have a little bit of conversation over?
And remember, once again, if you, those of you sitting down there, if you would pass the mic, if you're going to have something to say.
Holding one area that, covering the whole thing, we also had a sheet that broke it down that who would be the primary implementer of these different areas.
Yeah.
And we don't have that here with us tonight, but,
Yeah.
you know, Parks and Recreation would have some, downtown merchants may have something.
Yeah, so Chair Mifflin, that is actually integrated into the comprehensive plan as the 12th and final chapter.
Right.
So whenever we go from this section of the agenda to the next section of the agenda, we will get that pulled up on the screen.
Okay.
And we can look at, again, specific implementation. I wanted, and again, this was kind of the purpose of having this separate from the comprehensive plan, is to understand that the city council votes on these goals and objectives. They don't vote on the comprehensive plan. They just acknowledge it and then hopefully support it. And so this is something that was voted on, though. So it's something that both the city council as well as the commission took formal action on. Yes.
One of the things that keeps coming up that we haven't really figured out how to tackle yet is the one H01, provide a full spectrum of quality housing options for all residents, as well as the one that follows that says decrease financial barriers to affordable housing. And that's a topic that we've been trying to tackle on the city council for a while, and so if we could spend some time there.
Yeah. Again, this is a perfect example where I'm going to say a little bit, and I'm going to go sit down. I think you guys get to talk about this one. because this is the definition of a policy level discussion. I will say the one thing that I'd like to contribute to staff is no one goal or objective stands alone by itself. All of these are interconnected and intertwined. So when you look at those goals from the housing, they tie right back into transportation, they tie right back into community form as well. At the very top of community form, CF1-2, says plan for higher density residential uses in areas that have multiple transportation connections to commercial areas and community facilities. And so as we're talking about housing, remember, we're still talking about community form. When we're talking about community form, there has to be a transportation element that makes it make sense. And so I'm going to go sit down, and I encourage you to look over at your chair of the Planning Commission right there. And if you guys have specific staff questions, I'd be more than happy to contribute. I'm also going to look at my senior planner, Ms. Elise Ketz, who participated, was really the lead on this most recent comprehensive plan update. And so when it comes time to that kind of background knowledge on the conversations around these different goals and objectives, she's going to have a lot more information on that.
Charlie?
Yeah, Ken.
So if I could, just as an overarching comment, starting this off, I think one of the things that's important for us to realize and remember is this is a planning document. And so starting back in 2022, we began, developing, these goals and objectives and having the community discussions and things like that. There are lots of outside influences that impact our ability to be able to work on or achieve a number of these things that are outside of our control, And just an example, because of the wastewater plant, for instance, we were in an area of where we didn't grow like we could have because of limitations. And so, as those kinds of things happen, we need to call on each and every one of the areas that have contribution to this and stay coordinated in our efforts, our strategies and annual plans to implement each of the individual parts. But then as those situations correct themselves, then, kind of the floodgates open, right? And then we may see some pent-up demand and those kinds of things, so we need to respond to those in similar fashion. So making sure that we're all kind of coordinated in that activity. But I think the big piece that maybe hasn't been said is this is a community effort. It's not just the Planning Commission, it's not just the City Council, it's not just the Fiscal Court, but it's all of the areas within the community that come together to make this happen. And we've got to stay coordinated, and we have to have that North Star. So being able to articulate that North Star so that we're all headed in the same direction in whatever our roles and responsibilities are. So I just wanted to lay that out as a foundation for what I hope is going to be a really great conversation, because this is, I think, another one of those great examples of being proactive. I want to thank Holden and Charlie for helping to set this up.
Right.
Like Holden said, that, we need to consider the transportation issues whenever we're looking at housing. Along what Kim said, another area that we need to consider is the school board. We have developments out here that are going to put hundreds of new houses in an area. Does the school system have a school in that area, an elementary school in that area that's already at capacity? Or can they handle that? We need to be talking with lots of different people when these items are coming up. Affordable housing, does it need to be done through the private sector, or does the government need to get involved and build some of these affordable housing units? So all of those things, we need to hear from everybody And let's talk it out and talk about it.
Charlie, I have one other area that if we could have some discussion with this community of people and others is EG4. If one of the goals and objectives is to promote Scott County's image as a superior location for industrial development, we've had a lot of back and forth between the public and the magistrates and city council about that kind of growth and how we have smart growth and growth that's sustainable with our current infrastructure. And I think we need to land there a little bit and clarify some things.
Anything else that someone has a hot button for, or do we just need to?
Whether this is the appropriate section to talk about it or not, but a lot
Excuse me,
of the developments
excuse me,
that we're having
thank you.
in Georgetown, that our roadways are not adequate for the development.
It's on.
The roadways don't seem to be adequate for the developments. Like, for example, Old Oxford Road. There's several developments now on Old Oxford Road, on the corner of Old Oxford Road and Connector. There's going to be apartments there, and so I've been watching as they've been working on that. And there's, when you turn into there, that's not a good opening, and when you go back to where their opening's going to be, and there's that hill that goes across there. It looks like they've taken some of it off recently, but it's still there, and that's horrible across there. So us, for the city, our part in it. Okay, so we're going to have to eventually go back in there and do something to that road, but it shouldn't be us having to go back there and do that road because it was semi-adequate. But now, because of the apartments that are going to sit there, depending on how many people are going to live in those apartments, it's absolutely not adequate. And Connector may be the state, so we can't do too much about that, but we can, that road is going to be our responsibility. And my frustration that I have felt recently, being back on the council, the frustration is all of this falls back on the taxpayers to have to fix it, and we're limited with our sources of what we have, and I don't want to charge more taxes on people. So this is where I think it is falling through the cracks that the developers should be responsible for some of this stuff. I'm not necessarily talking about impact fees, but I'm thinking they should be doing more on the front end than what they're doing, and that could be strictly, that's where we got to fix our zoning ordinances, which is the city ordinances, so we got to go in there and fix it. And that's a way that I think we need help desperately to try to fix problems in the future. If we're not going to do an impact fee to have the developer help us pay for it, then we need to go in and fix the zoning ordinances that we have. But that's a huge frustration, and that's just one example. They're everywhere. Everywhere you see a new development, there usually gets a extra lane in there, but really they haven't widened the road much, and they're still a hazard. So.
And council is frustrated, and planning and zoning is also, because, you know, we ask ourselves if the future land use map shows that a residential development can go in there, and we've got a developer that wants to develop it, can we deny it just because the road isn't adequate? You know, legally, can we do that? And so that's some of the things that we ask ourselves all the time there too.
Can we have an answer? I'll just keep it here. Can we have an answer to that? What says you can or you can't? What says that you should or you shouldn't? Because, you know, for us, really and truly, it's annexation or it's not annexation. After that, the zone changes automatic, basically, and it goes off to you all to do the rest of it, and to the Planning Commission to oversee the development of it. And then we get dumped back on the problems that come later, come back on to us. So I would love to get some of those problems, because you all just went around the room. I'm the one that's been here the longest. So I know those problems, and it's a cycle, and they will be there. They will come. It may be time when you have a new development, but they will come. So how can we get on the front end? Is it strictly we got to change our ordinances to make them more restrictive? And then if we make them more restrictive, every time I turn around, I hear, oh, well, they passed a variance. There's 2 houses in my neighborhood that should not be built. They passed a variance to be able to allow these houses to be sitting on top of each other when the rest of us are not. So those are the things that bring out the frustration, and those are the things that the public will come to us and say, okay, well, this has happened. How did you let this happen? Well, I didn't. Maybe I did because we haven't passed good ordinances, but I didn't. It was the Planning Commission allowed the variance to happen. It's out of our control. Well, Planning Commission is not the elected officials. We are.
Yeah.
So who does it come back on? Us, and we feel like we should be able to do something. So.
So gets frustrated with the variances, and that's been a problem, an issue I've had since I've been on the commission is I watch the laws happen, and there they are, and they say, well, except for the variance here. And then like the 3-story apartment buildings, it's, well, the first person gets a variance for 20 feet over, and then everybody gets a variance for 20 feet over, and now we have to change the law because everybody has a variance for that. Well, what the heck happened with the original law? Why was it there? We should have changed that before we allowed all the variances. And that's where we get to here, from here, with no change. And all of a sudden, everybody's here. That's a frustration that I see sitting on commission. So a lot of the same things I struggle with.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad's right, yeah. I'll just keep going.
Say one more time,
Brad's right. On the record, Brad's right. But even if we change our ordinances to tighten our ordinances up, and I hate to tighten them up so much that nothing ever can be outside of that because there are issues that need to change. But if we change them and there's still variance given for everything that comes down the pike, then what was the point of us going through the exercise of changing the ordinances? All right, I'm going to try not to talk about it.
I've got a timer on that.
But there are standards by which roads are established and things like that. So if the standard isn't right, then we need to back up and address the standards. And that may mean it's not necessarily something that we have to do locally. It may be something we need to talk with the state, and we may need to have state law changed and those kinds of things. But you've got to have standards because folks have to build to a standard. And if they're not building to a standard, then there needs to be an explanation and a process to say whether or not that's an acceptable or unacceptable way to deviate from that standard. But I think all of this needs to go back to whatever that standard is and what's the controlling authority. And if there's things that we need to do, then by all means, let's make sure we have a list of those so that we can talk to our local state officials and help them help us change it for the better. The other opportunity that we have, KLC is going to have their conference the next 3 days, and so those kinds of things are the things I'm going to be talking about with a lot of my peers across the state. And if we need to develop a group to go after this, we can leverage that as well. So it's just a matter of identification of the problem, coming up with a proper solution, and implementing it to be able to correct something that's local.
And he's coming up here, and I want to brag on Holden for just a minute, because the variance issue, that was one of the first things he pinpointed is, hey, we're going to have to change these things because we're doing this. It was an issue he saw, and we're trying to address those now as we go forward. And I'm very tickled with the job he's done in that.
I'll say it for the second time on the record, Brad's right. Just keep this going. So again, I just want to interject for just a brief moment. So where do variances come from? Within our zoning ordinance, we do have specific requirements related to variances. However, above and beyond that, there is a KRS 100.243, that all variances are inevitably reviewed against. I've said it before and I'll say it again. To Brad's point, variances can't be performative in nature. And granting of one variance does not create precedence for the granting of more variances. And we really do, we have to hold firm to that. And staff has done a good job, I think. Professional courtesy, you never throw anybody under the bus, right? I've seen my staff really step up to the plate and make sure that when variances are coming, they're getting the level of review that I think is they deserve. With that said, I kind of want to talk about kind of how this plays out sometimes. Within KRS 100.243, Section 2, it says, "The board shall deny any request for a variance arising from the circumstances that are the result of willful violation of the zoning regulations by the applicant subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulation from which relief is sought." And then right above that too, that's Section 1C, it says, "The circumstance are the result of actions of the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulation from which relief is sought." In other words, you can't give yourself the hardship that you're then seeking relief from. I do not want to look over at some very qualified lawyers and start giving legal advice. But I'll say the way staff typically interprets this is if you are coming to us with a development plan where you are creating the lots and setbacks and things like that, and then immediately coming in with a development plan that says we need relief from the lot lines that we just drew, we are hesitant to allow that. We typically try to go back upstream and say, before you draw those lot lines, make sure you can meet those setback requirements. To Ms. Karen Tingle-Same's point, and I don't know the exact variances that you had referred to, but this is a consistent thing across Georgetown. We don't want houses on top of each other. We don't want to, we have some pretty generous lot sizes. I mean, we could fit houses on smaller lots. The community says we don't want to do that. Our setbacks serve a vital function. So when we do grant a variance at the discretion of the Planning Commission, there is a level of review that goes behind that and along with that. The big takeaway, though, is we can tighten up our zoning ordinance. We should. We should make sure that our zoning ordinances is getting us to those goals and objectives that you have in front of you. But we do have to realize that there will always be that state standard against which variances could be reviewed and should be reviewed if they meet those specific requirements. I like the way this conversation is going. Keep it up, guys.
I will say that, like you were talking about the variances for the lot sizes, I'm sure that's what people, well, and I go into those meetings the same way and I get upset and I'm like, okay, we're asking for these variances. But then at the bottom, by the time you get through it, you realize that a lot of the times they're doing that, the actual lot size average is still larger than if they all had that minimum. And that's hard to say no to because common sense dictates, well, that makes sense. You know, as long as you've got the same number of units in there to make it fit for the developer and the development, you have to make those variances. And I do take that serious, being on commission, to watch over those things. So we look at it best we can and we're on the same page.
The one in particular, I'll go to Houghton and take a closer look at it, but the lots are too small, and I'm sure that they didn't fit the standard of what the rest of the neighborhood is. But I'll go to Houghton and take a look at that one-on-one with you.
And this is going to come out the wrong way, but it's not against you, Holden. You stood there and bragged one day and said, we haven't turned down any projects. And that sounds worse than it is, but I know what you were getting at. We've done our due diligence, but, you know, David and I were just talking a few minutes ago about projects that come up that anybody that's been around Georgetown more than 40 years doesn't want to see these things come in here. Well, how do we say no? Well, we have attorneys that say we can't say no. We have people that said we can't say no. We don't have this. So we have people that are pushing things through without any regard with, in one of the very projects or the goals is the heritage of Scott County and Georgetown and Stamping Ground and Sadieville. But yet, when it comes time to preserving those, throw it out the window, it doesn't count. So where do we go? At what point is saying no okay?
Illegal.
And that, but that's the thing. We sit on here, and Charlie knows, everybody knows that a lot of things that we approve is by the ordinance or by the law that we don't agree with personally. But where is the fine line? I mean, just like the recycle center on Sims Road. You know, that was turned down, but a gentleman stood up and he was right. Yeah, you know, I wouldn't want it in my backyard either, but it's gotta go somewhere. We're all gonna have garbage, it's gotta go somewhere. Where do you have that kind of thing? Where do you do that? How do you present that? And just like the housing thing, me personally, we need more housing, affordable housing. Instead of taking all the farmland, Brad and I talked about this, what they do put more houses on it, make the lots smaller. That way maybe they'll leave some farmland alone somewhere else. Because when Brad and I and Todd, I don't know if we're in school together here, this was a farming community. It's no longer a farming community. It's a manufacturing community, so everybody has to adjust to that. But yet there's people like us that have been here all of our life that see that, it doesn't sit well sometimes.
And what we're sitting here doing now, and something we talked about too, something we're sitting here doing now shouldn't be done in 2025. It should have been done in 1985, before the boom of Georgetown. But we're now, because everything was kicked down the road, here we are once again. What are y'all gonna do about it? Well, it's, you know, a little too late for that.
But also you got thinking that even though you can't undo what happened in 1985, we got to go from where we are today. So the problems we have today is what we got to tackle. That's the concern there. You can think about 1985, 1990. It's not going to change what we're looking at. And now what we got to do today is, okay, so we have these problems. So now how do we fix these particular problems? How do we get affordable housing? As we all know that we get more people apartments because that's what the market shows. You find more young people do not want homes. They would like that opportunity to go and do that. And some of them, if you're just coming out of college and so on, you can't afford a house. You can't afford it. So just like anything else, if you're gonna go buy a car, you're gonna go buy what you can afford. You're not gonna go buy a luxury car and know yourself you can't pay for it. So the issue is figuring out how do we address the problems that are facing us now in a way that looking ahead. Because this problem is not going to be just for today. This will be a continuing problem that we're going to probably tackle throughout our lives. Because it's like a moving target. You know, just when you think you got it right here, the target moves because something happens. Heaven forbid we don't have another pandemic. But you have those things that happen that changes things. So we have to figure out as elected officials, developers, and everybody has to come to the table and say, what is the best thing that we can do for Georgetown today, tomorrow, the next day, and the next day?
Well said, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about one other different thing we haven't talked about yet, and that's safety. Earlier this year, we had staff reports at City Council from our police chief and our then fire chief. And each chief in their staff reports mentioned that we were pretty understaffed as a city with regard to personnel, and I think those figures might have ranged, I don't have them in front of me, but maybe around 20, 25, even 30% on staff for both firefighters, police officers. And then, of course, we've got ongoing needs with fire stations. For our current residents of the city, if everyone here is living in a city that's understaffed with emergency personnel, and then we annex and rezone more property, and we don't add sufficient officers to handle that, how do we reason and explain that to our current citizens what we're doing? And does that also give us a legal argument to where we shouldn't annex more property to do that because we're compromising their safety? How could we reason that to them?
Well, I think you also got to look at the footprint. You're gonna have to expand. Our job is to provide services, and services cost, and it's never gonna go down. So what do? Sometimes you have to expand that footprint to where you got to bring in jobs, because jobs do pay for growth eventually. But if you don't allow that mechanism for us to make that growth because of bringing in jobs, then we're always going to have that problem where, how do we do that? But we have, again, is put resources in place. Resources may be, we need to add more staffing. Because to me, staffing is like any other infrastructure that we don't think of. We don't think of police and fire as infrastructure, but I do. Because that is just as more important as roads, as anything else, water and sewer, because those are pieces that you have in place in which to move forward with that.
Charlie, can I go back to the point Todd and David brought up in terms of the heritage and things like that? I think one of the solutions that I'd love to see there is we have historic districts and things like that designated, but they really don't have teeth. You can do a lot of things. And so, again, I would go back to the standard argument of we need to beef up the standards so that we can preserve our heritage, preserve, some of the areas in town, whether it's city or out in the county or rural areas and things like that. However, we do that as well. Same kind of thing with conservation programs and those kinds of things. But what's important to us as heritage, we need to focus on and put standards around. And so, at least from a city perspective, I think we can take under these goals and objectives under the heritage section and put some focus behind some standards to beef up protecting that. And there's been a lot of conversation about that, but I think that's an action step we can take to help promote and live out these goals and objectives and accomplish maybe some other things besides just standards on protecting heritage. It has some ripple effects as well. Sorry, Michael, I was trying to get that in before you changed the subject. Sorry.
We can sit here all night long and talk about this and, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. But, David and Todd and Kim, what you just said is key to everything. We have to have the right tools to have a sustainable growth that doesn't kill us at the same time. I think one of the most important aspects of the goals and objectives is under economic growth, create more local businesses and job opportunities. I'd like to see the numbers of the high school kids that are graduating and leave this town. We need to find a way to keep them here. As you all know, the city doesn't live on property taxes. The occupational tax is our foundation. So therefore, we have to create jobs, and to create jobs, we need to not only bring in new community members, but also keep the ones that we have. So, one of my primary goals as a council member is to work with planning and zoning. I was on planning and zoning for 8 years, and, we had the same issues then. And, Todd, I believe you said it. A lot of these things have been just, we don't change the status quo. But I think the time has come right now that we have to take a look at this. We have to get some tighter measures in place as far as zoning regs to help us achieve that. So, again, we can sit here and talk about this all the time, but I think we need an in-depth, study. Let's look at our zoning regulations. What's surrounding areas doing? Do we need to tighten the densities? Restrict the height of apartment buildings, and this goes back to, and also feeds into affordable housing. What's affordable for one person may not be affordable for another. So we have to work not only with the city and the county, but we have to work with developers. And we need, through our zoning regulations, we need regulations that are going to encourage developers to come in and, provide affordable housing, whether, through state grants, federal grants. So, maybe, as I said, maybe a study, to look at this stuff and look at best practices. What are others doing? We can sit there all day and all night and talk about this, but we've got to put our foot on the accelerator and get going.
I'm glad you're up here. I've got a question for you.
Great.
So, in that regard, things come to us, and you've got and then the comp plan, and a developer comes in, and they've got a choice to make it between here to here, and that's their choice.
Yeah.
Well, because the market demands, we've got a lot of apartment buildings and things. Well, is it possible to have a sliding scale on that, like we can allow so much percentage of growth in 1 year, and once that percentage is filled up, before we do anything else, we have to do this. We have to provide more small housing or more apartments to keep things on an even keel. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
I do. So I've not been in Kentucky my entire life. So I spent most of my life in Texas and a little bit of time up in Washington State. Texas, it's a big property rights state. Kentucky, big property rights state. Washington approaches things a little different sometimes. So almost the reverse of kind of what you just laid out, I've seen done in other major cities in Washington, wherein when a development comes in, a certain percentage of units is required to be multifamily affordable housing units in that development. And so that becomes a requirement. Elsewhere, I've seen like tax credit projects where 80% of all units have to be preserved for this income type or the other. I've even seen programs where you can waive a percentage of the property tax for a development that's going to give you the type of units that you're looking for. You can do it a lot of different ways, but this actually gets back to something that was kind of left out there. How do you say no? And from the staff perspective, the only way to say no is to have it written down in your development regulations when and how that no comes about. In this circumstance, again, I'm going to be goofy, right? But if somebody, and look at Ms. Hambrick right here, wanted to put an airport in your neighborhood, we would look at the approved uses in the zone, and we would say, no, you can't put an airport there. And they say, okay, well, what about a tire factory? We need more industrial in Georgetown. I want to put it right next to Ms. Hambrick. We would tell them, no, that does not meet our development pattern. The answer, no matter what they apply for, the answer in that situation would be no. Now, again, Ms. Hambrick, I don't know your zoning, but I'm going to guess it's R2. A majority of the residential development across Georgetown is R2. The R2 says that we can allow for, I'd pull it up, but I'm just going to tell you, planned unit developments for residential uses only. That is one of the uses that is allowed in the R2 zone. And so then we would go to our planned unit development section, which is about this long, and just says planned unit developments are allowed. That doesn't give you surety as a property owner in that zone That doesn't even give the developer surety because they don't know what that means. So a lot of times they don't know what to ask for or what not to ask for. So to Mr. Hampton's point, when we start to, if it is the desire of the planning commission and the desire of the city council, because I think that's agenda item 5A, process for updating and amending zoning code. If that's the desire, when we start reviewing our zoning ordinance, that's the type of stuff that we need to be looking for. Where is there a lack of clarity? Where do we need to expand further? And then where it's appropriate, do we tighten? And then also at the same time, where do we loosen it? Because if we want that, as Ms. Leslie Mitchell said, if we want that housing option that's across all types, we have to figure out where to say yes to those things. It can't just be no. It has to be yes when it makes sense. The other reason I came up here is the other thing at play that was talked on for annexation. Within the comprehensive plan, there is a specific policy for the city of Georgetown that says annexation policy. One of the very first conversations we ever had was, what is the city of Georgetown's annexation policy? Mayor Jenkins said it. Not all annexations are equal. The way you pay for city services, for the most part, is by making sure that you have a growing job space. That objective that says we want to be a superior option for industrial development is because typically that helps out that tax revenue. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. That's where if the conversation is ready to move towards the comprehensive plan, the next section up, we could start to look at that future land use map, which ideally is where some of these decisions are made before the development comes to the door. This is now we're going to shift into kind of this long-range planning mindset. If you guys are ready to move on, again, I don't want to ask staff rush this conversation.
Well, I
Okay.
think it all ties in together.
It's got
So
to,
We're
yeah.
going to have to cross that bridge sometime, so
Right.
just do
Yeah.
that. We can always come back.
All right. Zach, would you pull up that comprehensive plan? Okay. So the comprehensive plan is a very long document. How many hundreds of pages did we say it was? It's pretty lengthy. Okay. So with the goals and objectives, we had 9 chapters. You'll notice there's 12 chapters in the comprehensive plan. That's those 9 associated with those goals and objectives that we've just spent some time talking about. The other 3 are an introduction, some context, and then an implementation chapter. Mr. Mifflin, you had mentioned that. I do want to make sure that we end up in that spot. Bedded within the comprehensive plan, if we'll go to, I'm going to say, community forum. There we go. And we scroll. We're going to be looking for that future land use map. You're going to go down a little ways, Zach. I want to give a big shout out to our tech guy tonight. Keep going. And this is available on our website. Keep going. For anybody to see, you guys do have, keep going, printouts. Okay, it should be this one right. There's the county. Next one up should be the city. Should be. There we go. Okay, future land use map dated 2024. As the city council knows, the zoning changes. What was the zoning throughout most of Georgetown, back when it was a farm community, that's gone. It's been replaced with other zonings throughout the city. As I mentioned earlier, the most common zoning throughout the city is the R2 zone. That's residential. I'm gonna grab one more. I believe also you guys were provided earlier this year a table that showed all the acreages for the various zones across the city. It is not one-to-one, but the future land use map basically predicts out when and if development comes to an area within the urban service boundary or in some areas within the city limits of Georgetown, what an appropriate zone would be or what an appropriate use category would be. When we get a request for something like an annexation and a zone change, which are often paired together, this is the document that we're comparing things against. When we talk about making sure that Georgetown is a superior place for industrial development, this is the document where we've identified the acreage that we believe is necessary to allow for those future industrial project sites. This is also where we identify those environmentally sensitive areas, so that when a large project comes to us and we talk about kind of that preservation of land, that's what it's being tied to, is if it's in our floodplains or creek corridors, we're going to keep development out of that. So this, again, is that forward-looking document that visualizes where we anticipate seeing growth and what kind of growth we can anticipate seeing. And then in the event that we anticipate a shift within the Georgetown itself, the character changing from one zone to another, that would be reflected in here as well. I want to just kind of talk about one thing before I sit back down as well. Adaptive reuse is a fantastic tool. Infill development is a fantastic tool. But there's nothing better than greenfield development for implementing the goals and objectives of your plan. That first bite of the apple is the most important bite that you're going to get. That's, again, when you're coming from a clean slate and you have the ability to review it for the first time against those existing standards, that's where you can have the most impact. And so when we, it came up the other day, somebody just asked me a question. They said, if my neighborhood gets rezoned, what does that do to me? You're not affected. Your use is preserved. We don't come and rezone things underneath people and then say they have to stop whatever that ongoing use was. So that character persists. But as new development comes in and it meets those new standards, those new goals and objectives, whatever that is, that's where you're going to begin to see those changes for development. So this is a future land use map. It looks to the future. It is not the same as our zoning map. And that's important to kind of understand too. Future land use. Any questions for me before I sit down? Yes?
So this is in our comprehensive plan,
It is.
and anyone can see this.
That's correct.
And so could you walk us through what happens if I'm a developer and I want to do what this is set aside for?
Yeah. Yes.
What happens if you say, well, I don't really know? The answer's no, even though it says, let's just say it's zoned industrial, and we say no.
Okay. So if it's zoned industrial, that's a little bit different.
Well, not zoned, but
Yes.
if it's
Future
in the-
land use map says
Right.
industrial. Okay.
Right.
As the council's aware, as the planning commission is aware, when we review something against the zoning ordinance, that is pretty cut and dry. If you meet the standards, the answer is going to be yes. If you don't meet the standards, the answer is going to be no. There's a lot more discretion that the planning commission can, and as well as the city council, can kind of entertain when looking at a zone change. Because the zone change requires, again, review against a KRS statute, but it relies on a whole host of other things. You talk about infrastructure, water, sewer, but also police and fire. If it doesn't make sense, there is discretion to say no to that zone change. If it doesn't make sense to annex, then that is the council's full discretion to say, no, we will not annex that. So let's pretend, again, that a developer's come in and they have a current, we're gonna play, we're like 3 hypotheticals into this to get to where we can do something with it. I take everything with a very big grain of salt on this one. Something is in the urban service boundary, but not inside of city limits. It's currently zoned agriculture, but it has a, let's say, a commercial future land use. When the developer comes in, the first thing we're going to ask them is what do they want to rezone it to? Because if it says commercial and they say, I want it to be industrial, right there, that's a big red flag. All of a sudden, staff is very likely to not be supportive of that. But let's pretend that they pick B5 highway commercial because it's near to a major arterial road. Staff is going to write a staff report that says the future land use map says that this is an appropriate zone and that it's supported by the comprehensive plan and that future land use map. Then we're going to come to a public hearing. It's going to be advertised, again, to the public. We invite the public to come, invite to entertain testimony related to this project. And then in doing that, well, one of the things that's also going to happen very likely, since we're talking commercial development, I'm going to look at Lisa because she is my traffic study expert on this, they're going to spend some sort of traffic study associated with this development, where they're going to lay out either how it's going to impact the roads or is not going to impact the roads, either how there is sufficiency or what improvements they plan to do to make it sufficient. Staff is going to review that very thoroughly. Lots of questions will be asked all along the way, from technical review committee all the way up until the time when a packet is created and sent to the Planning Commission. Day of the hearing shows up, Planning Commission convenes a hearing. First thing that happens, staff talks, then the applicant talks, and then everybody from the public gets an opportunity to comment on this particular proposal. Staff does a fantastic job going out to sites, checking things out, looking at aerials, looking if there's been previous developments, lots and lots of things. But when you have a room full of people, typically new information comes out. Stuff comes up. The lived experiences of the people in that neighborhood come into question. That's when Planning Commission gets to look at that and then make a determination whether they believe that the evidence that has been submitted is sufficient to either warrant that zone change and make findings such, or make findings that say that at this time it would be inappropriate to zone it to X, Y, or Z. At that point, moving forward, that recommendation moves to the legislative body. In this case, it was the urban service boundary, and it was some sort of commercial use. Likely that's going to be the city. We would then forward the Planning Commission's recommendation, either positive or negative, on to City Council. City Council then has a couple different options. This is, again, you kind of branch off a couple different ways. And man, I would love to look at a lawyer, right, and make sure I don't miss one of these different options over here. But again, grains of salt, the three basic ways that it can go, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, is they can either take the evidence and findings collected by the Planning Commission and then either A, concur with them, or B, make separate findings to overturn the Planning Commission's decision. Or two, they can have an new evidentiary hearing where they invite new testimony and new information for them to consider and then make that same determination, yes or no. Did I miss the third one?
No, you're good.
I'm good there. Okay. See, that was pretty okay. All of that happens between Planning Commission's recommendation and then either the concurrence of the legislative body or the overturning of the Planning Commission's decision is in a 90-day window. If the action does not take place within 90 days, the Planning Commission's recommendation carries, and that then becomes the new zone. So lots of conversations, lots of meetings, lots of paperwork. Very thorough review.
But we have to have it early enough from you all, because we've had two times, I think I'm saying this right, we've had two times this year that we might have wanted to have a hearing, but because the time didn't allow us to have a hearing, it came so short, we didn't have that window of time to set up and have a hearing. So that's something, somehow or the other, we need to get that so that we have time to make that option, whether we want to have a hearing or we don't want to have a hearing on it.
Yeah, and again, I'm not up here to cheerlead, but I will say I believe that we have addressed those issues. I believe that we have a very efficient system moving forward. And the other thing is just to be aware that oftentimes city staff is aware of these cases well before that record is compiled and then sent on. As a courtesy, we send every Planning Commission packet on to the mayor and his staff, just so that they are aware of the actions that the Planning Commission is taking, because obviously you guys are partners in this as well.
So they get those actually before we take action, like we get the packets before, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you now send those to the, is there anything wrong with you sending those also to the council members at the time?
Nope.
Can we, I don't know if anybody else would, but for myself, I would love to have it ahead so I can kind of look, see what's going on.
Absolutely. And this is, again, for anybody watching on YouTube. All of this information is publicly available on our website as well. So we have an October 9th Planning Commission meeting that's scheduled. As soon as the packet's ready, it shows up on the website. We have a special called meeting October 8th. Same thing, the packet will be available on our website. But yes, we have, I think, 50 people on our email list for packets. You know, a few more doesn't hurt anything.
One of the things that Holden mentioned in that process, Tammy, was traffic study, and he just kind of mentioned it. And that's been a big problem that I have faced because the Kentucky Transportation Department will ask that they do a traffic study, which they do, but they have to do it on existing traffic.
Yeah.
And so you have either a commercial or residential development, and the highway department says there's not enough traffic right now to justify a stoplight or widening the lanes. Well, no, but we're getting ready to put this big development in, and it's going to automatically trigger, more traffic. As an example, you all know there's a commercial development at the corner of Frankfurt Pike and the bypass that's going to have a Publix in there. That's known now. They've got their sign out there. And the traffic numbers were just extremely low. I asked the traffic engineer, why don't you go back down to Kroger or Walmart and count the traffic coming out of there? That's what that development's going to cause. Well, no, we have to do what's going right now, and which makes no sense at all.
Yeah, that's a question I've had. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, how have we ended up with, what we've got there at Culver's, Panera, Chick-fil-A? You can't hardly, how did that get through? Was it the traffic committee study again, that you can't even turn your car? And the same thing with the Walmart, Starbucks, gas station mess.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever that breakdown happened, we have to fix that kind of stuff, because that's where the accidents happen, and if we can help with that, we need to help with that.
Well,
I was just going to, I think that's a prime example of what I was talking about, that should be one of the things on our list that we talk to our legislators and actually invoke some change.
Yeah, because it's out of our hands right
Right,
now.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just,
If that's where the fault lies, then that's what we need to do. But there may be other areas that can be stopgap there, and if there are, we need to find those stopgaps.
You know anybody?
That's what I was going to say. Now, to Kim's point, yes, I mean, we have, two state reps here that represent Scott County, and you have your state senator. Those type of changes are going to have to come out of the state legislature, with the Department of Transportation and things like that. And until we get that done, to Charlie's point, it's going to be the same. We won't change anything.
But it took, like you said, going to the state representatives for years, because now the state is now going to look at where Starbucks is and putting
the road there.
And there, that's going to put the roundabout, and state's going to actually widen that road out. That's one of the projects that, a matter of fact, I went and sat in on and was told about that. Said this is what the project is. The roundabout will be at right at where Planet Fitness is, I believe, there, and then also where Lowe's is. So it's going to be a double roundabout. And of course, it takes it. I mean, how many years if that's been going on? But
Right.
That's what the state does. I'm gonna tell you what, the state does not like putting stoplights in because of that, the fact of that traffic. They don't see that. They look at it and say, well, they feel that backs things up. They feel that the best way to put these turnabouts in, and you see that going now, and it may not be the best thing. People are used to lights, but the state looks at things a little bit different way we look at it. And like I said, that's things that's out of this council's control and everybody else's control. What you do is you go to the legislature and say, hey, you know, maybe you can talk to them. Maybe they need to come and see exactly what we're dealing with here. But
Well, you know, no disrespect to anybody at the state or
Right.
local, but, you know, 2 roundabouts on Connector Road, all you're doing is taking cars from going in a straight and they're now doing a circle. So, you know, it's not gonna really help anything.
well, just hope nobody gets caught on it and gets, you know, be there all day trying to figure out how to get around it. But, one other thing before you say something, Brad. Those up here, make sure that your microphones are on, the green light is showing, because some of us didn't have it on and it wasn't picking up. So it would be great. All right.
I think one thing between the commission and the council, if we all sat down and wrote down our 5 things that bothered us, and then you put them in a thing and pulled them out, you wouldn't be able to tell who they were from. Before I got on the commission, I was like, why don't they do this? This makes no sense. And then you got to go, oh, it's because they can't. And they're hamstrung by these things. And I drive through and I think, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. How did this get here?
Right.
And then you're part of the process. You go, oh, I see how they got there. That's still stupid. And I can't fix it. And somebody else has to fix it. But when we work together, the more voices scream louder, get something done. And I love this meeting like this. We all love our community, and we want to see 20 years from now, our kids and grandkids love it the same way we do. And it's going to be different. We have to accept that it's going to be different. But what we want to do is bridge that gap that in 20 years we don't have our kids looking back and go, why did they do that 20 years ago? They should have done something then. Let's do it.
And I think also that you have to look at the future land map and look at places, okay, so where do we need, we need to put something in. If somebody wants to develop something, maybe we can look at this map and say, okay, what would be the best place we think we can do this so we don't have a fluctuation at one end versus another end, where you're growing heavily on the east side, but the west side is not. So this is made where, we as a group look at, okay, what do we want Georgetown to look like? Do we want it all to be on one end this way? No. So we probably need to look at this map and say, okay, what makes sense? Where can we put this based upon that? If housing development wants to come in here, then where do we put it? Where do we put it that makes sense? Using this map as a guideline. And then I think we were talking about, and I think Tammy was talking about affordable housing. This is where we as a group will have to talk with, where the county, the government, and city government will need to talk with developers and talk with outside industries such as the banks and so on, to where, if you look at the project that happened at Transylvania, that project for affordable housing came about, and I talked to Mayor Gordon about it, it came about by them coming together, looking at that, because they're a little bit more land strapped than what we are. And so they looked at it, and they looked what made sense. They actually pinpointed that particular spot. Look, using their map, and say, okay, this makes sense where we can put this. And then they developed, by working with each other, okay, we're going to give you the land. If the city or the county owned that land, they gave that land to them. Then they got some low type of loan from the bank where they can pay it back, and then they can say, okay, here's the type of housing we want there. And that's what it's going to take. We can sit there and talk, like you said, we talk about this all day, but it comes to a point where we get with Holden and his staff and look at some things and say, okay, what makes sense? Where can we put it? And then go out and get people to work together to make this happen. That's what's going to happen.
Mayor, does, on the low income housing, does the city have any brownfield areas that are not developed right now, have sat empty for years, that we could pursue a developer like that?
I don't know, but that's something we have to look at, see what land we do on. And I think that.
Or maybe not
certain-
city-owned, but just
Yeah,
knows of private-owned, but just has been underdeveloped, or not developed at all for 5 or 10 years.
That's something I think that's the starting point. You have to look at and see what land there is available from there. And I think this land map will help. And you can also look at, PVA can tell you what land has not been, been used for years, I would say. So,
Well,
yeah,
I don't think we need to limit ourselves to new construction, affordable homes.
Right.
We also need to look at revitalization.
Right, that's true.
Of blighted areas.
Yeah.
So that would be a big help right now.
like for instance, if you're talking with groups such as Habitat for Humanity will be a good nonprofit group to work with, because they do this a lot. They trying to find areas of housing that's either going to be demolished and try to work within that to kind of rebuild it, and stay within that. But once again, we're talking about is taking this and putting some steps in place. That's, I think, the thing is we need to do. Again, and I think that's the good thing about having this together, is find out what are the issues that we're having, and then from there, put an action plan in place that makes sense.
Well, I think one action plan that I'm hearing that needs to coalesce is that we need to have our legislators come and talk about very practical issues. And, I mean, you've opened my mind to the traffic thing. Those traffic studies need to be predictive rather than, well, this is the trickle before the development. Well, that seems like it should be an easy thing to fix at the legislative level. And so I realize that there'll be a back and forth with, different moneyed entities when you try to do things like that, but we're either going to try to change it or we're just going to sit and have the same problems happen over and over.
Well, Willow, I brought up and went to Secretary over Transportation, wanting a traffic light at Colony Boulevard and 25,
Right?
because those people coming in and out of there every day
Yeah.
take their lives in their own hands. And was pretty much told by the state, good luck, you're not getting a traffic light there. There's one right up there at Cardinal Drive. Well, that's only functional 2 times a day. They said, well, it's not busy out there, was the state's answer to that. Just like at a lot of other places. If you can't get one at Colony because it's only busy twice a day, how did they get one at Great Crossings High School when it's only busy twice a day? How did they keep one at Cardinal and 25 when it's only busy twice a day?
But again, I think those are issues where you have to.
We should ask them.
Yeah, but that's something that you, I think that's a separate conversation you need to have. But, I think this conversation here is figuring out what we can do as a collective body of fixing where we want to grow from here. And using this comprehensive plan and this map to show that, and stay within our means. And like you said, not get to ourselves where we're not going to where our infrastructure is not going to catch up what we need.
And I have told people that I know everyone here hears the same thing. The traffic's awful. And it's not awful compared to Nicholasville Road, but if you don't like the traffic now, wait 2 years. You're going to hate it. And that's what we're here to do, is to not only fix what we can fix, because I don't know how much we can fix in the past, like you talked about, but we can, going forward,
Right.
make better plans.
You only can address the problems that you're facing right now. You can't worry about the problems that will happen when you go, because that's what we've been talking about. Where do we go from now? What are the issues we're having now that we, as a collective body, can tackle to say what's good for this city? What do we want this city to go? I think Mr. Holt's back up.
Holden, can you go over what we're allowed to look at as far as traffic for approval or denial? Because we had several industrial things come up recently.
Yeah.
That we were hesitant because of the current road structure and there's no anticipation of the road improving. But we can't ask the applicant to do anything outside of what's on their boundary line. So can you go over that a little bit more so they know what we're able to do?
Yeah. So this is, I'll try to collect my thoughts for a moment. no development happens in a bubble. There's always going to be offsite impacts along the way. But as a planning principle, and within our legal authority, we can't require off-site improvements of an applicant to either A, make something better than it was before, as far as level of service is concerned, or B, be responsible for things that they are not reasonably impacting. I'm looking over here, in the planning world, there's two Supreme Court cases that are pretty important. It's called Nolan and Dolan. One deals with, yeah, I know, right? These are real Supreme Court cases, but one deals with the nexus. There has to be a nexus point between the decision-making and basically what's being asked. And then the other one relates to proportionality. You can't ask for, levels of service or improvement above and beyond whatever that proportional impact would be. So those are two tests that we have to run. But all that is aside from the practical perspective of how much of the road are you really responsible for? And the answer is just that. That's your frontage that you're dealing with. Ideas, though, and this is going to take some research. Just heard a great idea right here. Credit where credit is due. We require a traffic study. We had mentioned that it needs to be predictive. I would love to explore a possibility where we make sure that that traffic study is not just for that site, but also includes data from a similarly sized site, either in our community or a similar substitute if that's not already in existence. Mr. Mifflin, exactly what you said. Just go to Kroger. Count the cars at Kroger. Let us know what that is so that we can make a good decision. I will need to check to see if we can require a traffic study to basically do a traffic study for a property that that person is not responsible for and is not being considered as part of the proposal. But if we can, then we should. I think that would be a very good idea. Where I think this leads us, though, and where the conversation is heading, Zach, if you'll go back or up at the top over to the implementation chapter and scroll down. So we have a matrix of a number of different things that we are supposed to accomplish while this comprehensive plan is in effect. So again, goals and objectives updated every 5 years, comprehensive plan, basically the same thing. It is kind of weird because our goals and objectives were adopted in January of 2023. The comprehensive plan was not adopted until I guess it was June, July of 2024. And so there is a little bit of a lag between the two. But this implementation chart has done a fantastic job in kind of laying out a lot of the things that we've been discussing here tonight. One of the ones I want to highlight as we look maybe at that next section, which is process for updating and amending the zoning code, is item number 7 on that implementation list is to develop design standards for commercial development at gateways and along major corridors. So right now, we have limited design features baked into our zoning ordinance. It is the B5. We have some specific design standards.
B5 has performance standards and some design standards. B1 has some design standards.
Yeah. So
The big box are guidelines.
yes, and then the big box stores are guidelines. So number 7 right there, I think would be an excellent example of an opportunity for the Planning Commission in partnership with the City Council to begin looking at updating an ordinance to tighten it up, to create the specific requirements. Councilmember Stone, you've specifically talked about when you drive into Georgetown, what's the first thing you see? So this kind of sits right in line with that. Along those entranceways and in those gateways, what is the vision of our community coming into town? But the implementation list, it's 51 different items. If we were to, again, if the conversation is ready to begin kind of discussing what does a zoning code update look like, this is where I would start. And I would move through this implementation guide and I would find each and every one of those that's relating to the zoning ordinance and figure out how we're going to implement those things that are reflective of the goals and objectives that the council has voted for and a comprehensive plan that the planning commission has prepared and are already on the books as things that the communities say that we want to achieve. Because that's again, pulling out of a hat. These are the things that I think everyone can get behind. Obviously, the difficulty is in the details and making sure that how those are executed still gets us to where we want to go. I think a lot of the reason why we're having this conversation is because of that keep the status quo, don't rock the boat. And 1985 is 40 years ago now. But the next best thing is to jump on it right now. Is the body ready to move forward onto that next part of the conversation around zoning amendments?
I think, yes. I think that's why we're here.
Yeah, we have to take the lead.
And so, and I would be curious, like you said, the devil's in the details. So what does it look like to do that? Do we break it down? You've got 50 different things. Do we take five a month, or what do we do? How do we do this? Do we have a subgroup that does it and then brings it to council? How do we work through this?
That's a fantastic question. I'll talk high-level overview to start. Zoning ordinances can originate in one of two places. Either they can originate with the planning commission, which are then forwarded on to the city council for you guys' review. As a policy, we talked about that zone change having a 90-day window. Policy changes don't have a window. So, you can sit on that as long as you want to sit on it. We want to get it right, and there's no rush. So they can originate with the planning commission. Obviously, it makes sense as the administrators of the zoning ordinance. The staff here, that's the document that we live in every day. That's what a lot of us went to school to study and to look at best practices and all of that stuff. So it can originate with the planning commission. The other place it can originate is with city council. A city council can originate a zoning ordinance or zoning text amendment. That would then be forwarded to the planning commission for review. If it gets approved, again, it comes back to the city council and then a vote takes place. But so either way, both parties are engaged. Both the legislative body as well as the commission are involved in the process and are required for something to be amended. As we've just pointed out, that means that this has to be some type of partnership. Neither party can force it on the other. So from a practical perspective then to what Councilmember Leslie Mitchell has just kind of pointed out, what does that look like? I am staff. I'm here to support my city. I'm here to support my commission. But if I were king for the day, it's got to be a highly engaged public process. It has to have a steering committee made up of both members of the commission, city council, as well as members at large from the public. If I've heard any pushback against the comprehensive plan, it's been that it was a small group of people who made decisions that weren't representative of the entire community. If we go through a zoning text amendment process that then has the exact same outcome, I think we will have missed the boat. It's going to take buy-in from the community because, again, when we talked about how do you say yes and how do you say no, this is how you're going to do it. And so you have to be okay with somebody at the end of this process utilizing the text that you've provided and liking the outcome that it then leads to. And if not liking it, at least understanding why it is, where it's located, or to what intensity it is, or what use it involves. So small group, steering committee, lots of public outreach events, lots of surveys, but not just like token outreach. It has to be things that actually lead to meaningful impacts. We just went through the comprehensive plan process where a lot of this was done. We've still got a lot of the email list. We still have a lot of the resources. Obviously, we're creating new resources every day in our office. The thing to realize in this, though, is that this will not be a quick process. To give it the justice I think that it deserves, we are looking at 6 months to a year, bare minimum. And again, that is all dependent on how much public engagement we can get along this way.
And a lot of issue with the public engagement is nobody cares.
Until they
it's-
do.
Until it's until we've done our thing, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Well, you should have been there at the meetings.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And hopefully this, when we go around this, we'll do our due diligence again and try to.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to create any pressure. I don't want to create any timelines. But again, the goals and objectives get modified in 2027. My goal would be to have this finished prior to the end of 2026, so that we bring the goals and objectives and the comprehensive plan in line with one body of new text. The other thing that I think should be discussed is currently the city of Georgetown shares the zoning ordinance with Scott County, Stamping Ground, as well as Sadieville. The city of Georgetown is 40,000 people. It may become time to review whether or not they want an independent zoning ordinance separate and apart from everybody else. Right now, there's portions of the text that are say apply only in Scott County or apply only in the city of Georgetown. If again, from a public involvement perspective, when somebody says, hey, I'm reading your ordinance and the rules say this, and we say, no, down in the footnote, that only applies to here or there, not to where you are, that can get kind of confusing. The other thing to kind of realize that if you go down that route is it does create a little bit more flexibility. Right now we have R1, R2, and R3. We have B1 through 5 and the BP1. We have I1, I2. There's no reason that, like, those are not inscribed in stone, that those are the only zones that we have, or those are the only uses that can be utilized. If you have your own zoning ordinance, you can come up with whatever achieves those goals and objectives in this comprehensive plan that you want. Now, there's a framework, right? You don't just, you normally, again, we have best practices. We're very versed in kind of what modern zoning ordinances look like. But again, as staff, we'd be serving to assist you in achieving these goals and objectives, this comprehensive plan's goals and objectives. Does that help?
Thank you. That's, the only thing that I would say is that this is pretty overwhelming to handle all of that. And what would be the possibility of, if you put a steering committee together, that you tackle 1 through 3?
Yeah.
And then you go 4 through 6, or you look at like things, and so that you accomplish things along the way. You don't wait until all 50 have been looked at to bring it all, and we have to have a 8-hour meeting so that we know what the heck's going on.
Oh, sure.
I mean, seriously, if we had 2 of these to look at every council meeting, it would move right along, I think.
Yep.
And if you had a standing committee that tackled these, a few at a time, I think it would be more, we could manage it better.
I think if that's the will of the planning commission, if that's the will of the city council, then that's exactly what we're going to do. Because as the representatives of the community, we want their voice to be heard. And if that's the best way to do that, that's what we're going to do. The only thing I caution, and this is, again, I like our zoning ordinance. I like it so much that I continue to work with it every day. But the reality is that our zoning ordinance has been piecemealed together for quite some time.
Right.
There are sections and addendums and add-ons, and even the formatting throughout the document is not consistent throughout the same, because it very much has been exactly that. One new thing gets brought up, this little change gets made, these 2 sections are swapped places or added to, and it becomes at a point, and again, this is just opinion. It can become a bit unwieldy. There's maybe, again, for discussion, the idea of we're going to stop making changes to this document until we're ready to adopt, Georgetown zoning ordinance version 2.0 or whatever that is. And then it's a clean start, it's a clean slate, and then we go from there. Again, staff can do either one. I don't like that chuckle over there, but okay.
It seems to me, given the
Yeah.
many things that we deal with on council, that to put the time in to do 50 or 60 different things at one time would become overwhelming.
Sure.
And it would cause a glaze over, like, what the heck? And whereas if we know as a council that we're doing this, and we have 2 representatives, or however many you see, from the council, and they're going to be bringing us, this is section 1, 2, and 3 that we looked at, and we didn't see any changes on 1, but on 2 and 3, here's what it says, and here's what we want to do. What do you think? Let's get a consensus and move forward. I mean, maybe you don't adopt it till the end, but if we work at it
Yeah.
in pieces, I think it's more manageable. And
We could also break it up by article. That's the other thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
however you see fit.
Yeah, I like this. This is, I think, why we're having this conversation. Let me jump ahead. You may have recently received a series of zoning text amendments as well. Have those been? No. When House Bill 443 was adopted earlier this year, staff went through the zone change process with the Planning Commission that had a lot of what I'm going to call house cleaning items. But it is a lengthy document. And so understanding, again, kind of that glazing of the eyes and, the elephant's too big to eat in just one bite.
I think you brought it to us, and
Yeah.
we didn't act on it because.
Oh, no, this is a different one.
Oh, is it? Okay. Oh, so it's coming back.
It's a different topics.
Okay.
Same large body of text,
Yeah.
touching different things. I'm going to have to write a really good memo for that one.
Yeah.
The point is, and this is part of it as well, what we don't want to do from a staff perspective is to have multiple things kind of floating in the wind that are all related to one another and kind of hang out there in the ether together. And then if something does not get approval, then it somehow affects something downstream of it, or all of a sudden we have a version issue because, version 2.3 included this reference, but version 2.1 where it originated got voted down, but 2.2 where it was included is still, that's all way too gross for this conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah.
But the important thing to me is that I just heard that we're going to work together and we are going to tackle this elephant one bite at a time, and that we do want to see changes to the zoning ordinance to reflect this implementation schedule.
Yes.
Did I just hear all that, Brad?
You're right.
And what I was trying to say is that it can be brought to us in pieces.
Yeah.
But it's not ready to be voted on or made live or
Yeah.
whatever version, whatever, until we've gone through every one of them.
Yeah.
But don't bring all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Got,
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
okay. And Holden,
Yes.
since you would know which ones relate to which ones, then it's probably better if someone from your office is the one who says, here are the ones we're going to look at to start with. And you can match up the ones that are all impacted by the same thing. And then, okay, next we're going to do anything that has to do with the next thing. And so you organize it in a way that it makes sense.
Okay.
Okay? Is that,
That's putting a lot on.
what do you think?
To do something that makes sense.
Well, let's start.
Okay.
Holding along those same lines, piecemealing it, we're required by Kentucky statute to update the comprehensive plan every 5 years. But several of us in here were working on that comprehensive plan, and we started it within that 5th year, but it didn't get finished in that year time. And it doesn't say that it has to be. It just says you got to start it every 5 years. But one of the continuing education programs that I've attended several years back said, maybe you want to break down the comprehensive plan so that it's an ongoing process, but you're only tackling parts of it each year, instead of looking at the whole big thing at one time. You'd be working on it continuously, but it wouldn't be quite as overwhelming. So that may be something we want to consider also, looking at how we tackle the comprehensive plan there. Do we do it piecemeal also, or just once every 5 years, and it takes 18 to 20 months to get it done?
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned, was it House Bill 443?
Yeah.
Is that the one that said if they meet all the specs, we don't?
Yeah. With the one caveat being that if there's, and actually, I'm not going to mess this one up. If you'll give me just one moment, because it's a very short bill that got passed and now it has been integrated into KRS 100.
Because to me, there's nothing that shows how important the regs are than this bill getting passed. This really put everything in the forefront.
Well,
Now we have to have it right.
I think we lose even more control if we don't tighten up. So the time is right for this.
And even, we don't think of it so much as tightening as cleaning up.
Right.
You know, because we don't want to say that we
Exactly.
don't want growth, because we
That's a better
want
word.
to be able to clean, hold our garden and keep
Right.
things like we want, so.
So the specific language is that ordinances, rules, and regulations governing development plans may allow, I'll start at the beginning. Except as provided in subsection 2 of this section, the ordinance, rules, and regulations adopted pursuant to this chapter governing subdivisions and development plans, so only those two things, subdivision and development plans, shall be in the form of objective standards that shall be reviewed ministerially. So that's by staff. Ordinances, rules, and regulations governing development plans may allow for discretion to be applied by the approving authority in circumstances where, number one, an applicant seeks a deviation from the established objective standards. So right there, that's that ordinance that relates to variances. If they ask for a variance, we're taking it right to a hearing. Or number two, the approving authority determines based on substantial evidence that a strict ministerial application of the established objective standards would pose a specific threat to public health, safety, or welfare in the affected area. And so typically, and again, not a lawyer, although I do admire that. When you have words like substantial evidence, strict application, and then you have that specific threat, that's a relatively high bar. But it does allow for the reviewing authority, which in this case for planning or for subdivisions and planned developments, it would be the Planning Commission, to take it on as a public hearing. A great example of this, last month, we reviewed a very large industrial development. They asked for variances so that it came before the Planning Commission. In the event that they had asked for no variances, it was approximately, was a million square foot? 2.25 million square foot of industrial development. Staff has a pretty good feeling that that would have met those requirements and we could have brought it to a public hearing. But again, I'm not a lawyer. There's not a lot of case law related to this yet because it's a brand new state statute and hasn't been tested. But when you look at things like that, there is that opportunity, but it has to have substantial evidence, it has to meet specifics, it has to have specific threats, and then the Planning Commission can take it up. In the absence of that, though, we have to have objective standards that staff can review it against. If we do not have objective standards, we are in violation of that statute. So that is, again, how you say yes, how you say no. It has to be objective. That, I'm going to pontificate for just a second. The Planning Commission is not the enemy of development. The Planning Commission is also not the enemy of preservation and heritage and local culture. When the state wrote that statute, the idea is that Planning Commission was a problem and they needed to get out of the way.
That's what it sounds like.
We have to utilize the planning commission and my staff as the tool to achieve those goals and objectives that we spent talking about all night tonight. We have to be a part of the process, but we should be forwarding those goals and objectives that were voted on by city council and approved by the planning commission. That's our role in this as staff. Can I sit down?
Just before you do,
Okay.
I just want a next step.
Yeah.
So is the next step that the mayor and you all decide what this subcommittee looks like, and we get to work?
Yeah. So we
What's-
could do that. Again, to keep things clean, what I would appreciate, there's no action being taken tonight. Nothing was put in the agenda for any formal action. Nobody's writing down motions. What I would appreciate is a consultation with the mayor in this circumstance, where we figure out exactly what that steering committee would look like. And then I would appreciate if at one of the following, it doesn't have to be the next one, one of the following city council meetings, some sort of motion is made directing or requesting that the planning commission begin a review of a suite of policy-based amendments to reflect the existing goals and objectives and the comprehensive plan. Something like that.
Okay.
If city council thinks that's what we're trying to achieve, that's the language that works, we'd receive that. I would then go to my chair on the planning commission, and I would look to have some sort of similar motion passed by the planning commission to basically say that we're in conjunction on this, we both recognize this need, and then we would sit down and create that body, start looking for scheduling, start looking for those 2 or 3 things to start on the front end. Please do. I think we are now on define action items number 6.
I was really going to stay quiet tonight, but I want to add, as the council, you all, through a resolution or some type of action like that, you can create a committee. You can call for this to happen on the legislative side of the curtain too. So we would need to think through which parts of these fall within the executive function versus which parts fall within the legislative function and approach it through the proper channel. So if you have thoughts, I'm certainly here to help navigate what the best legislative path is or how we go about forming any type of committee or that sort of thing. So I just wanted to clarify that there's going to be players on both sides of the curtain, I guess, ultimately looking towards the same goal. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Because as doing the ordinance part of it is actually ordinance. That's not an executive function, that's a legislative function to do it. So for sure, it needs to be, you all can work that out, but we, the council, need to be the ones that are involved in the legislative function of it.
Yeah,
That's
the
what our
review and
role
creation
is.
of the ordinance.
And I'll volunteer for the committee at any time.
And I will add that the council currently does have as a standing item, thanks to you, we do have a standing item on this topic. So at every council moving forward until it's no longer an issue, this is the type of discussion that I would encourage you all to have during our regular council meetings. And then we can work in between to figure out how to communicate and share updates within the open meetings realm. But this is kind of the next step. So you'll have this conversation and then you'll go back to your individual bodies and work through things. And if we have to continue to call meetings like this or through a committee, we'll work through that. But I would challenge you to make this a true discussion item at the next council meeting or whenever the time is right. I'm not going to tell you when to talk about it, but that's what that platform is for as well.
Thank you. Next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad that we got that squared away to where we at least know what we're going to do. Again, this has been very, helpful because I think this is what the issues that both the planning commission as well as this council has to, we know there are some issues. We know there's some problem that needs to be fixed. And we know that there are certain things that this council and this planning commission wants to see this city looks like, just like me. There are certain things we want to say that this is what we want Georgetown to look like. So we are the ones that should be able to do that. Not taking back what happened before, let's just start with today, which is today is September the 23rd, 2025. Going forward, this is where we need to go. Let's start from day one. It's okay. We've got some directives of how we can do it in the legislative portion. Let's start looking at these pieces here and start taking a little bit of time and say, this is what we do, and Emily's back up because she wants to say something else.
Sorry, I'm taking notes tonight. So it sounds like we're kind of closing
Yes.
the conversation. So item 6, define the action items. So far, I've only heard 2 action items. Just want to make sure that I didn't.
That is funny, because I'm sitting here thinking, we've sat here for an hour and 45 minutes, and we've talked about the problems.
Yes.
And no one has ever said, what I went back to, put your list of problems down. And that goes back to what you said. We need to get together and say, okay, we think for P and Z, these are 5 issues. And you all need to get together and say, hey, these are 5 or 10 issues, because it's going to come from you all. You're all going to have to do this. And we need to get those things kind of out there tonight. We need to get that ball rolling, not just say, well, we had a great meeting, it was all great, pat ourselves on the back. No, it's time to say, these are our issues, and we want to go down this path.
Right.
That's my thoughts.
So I don't want to interfere, but I have taken notes, and we can distribute them. And if I missed anything or if we need to clarify, we'll definitely do that. But as far as the action items, I know there were questions raised about specific goals or specific elements maybe. It was about 2 hours ago, so I'm not sure. But as far as the action items, committee formation, putting together a committee to work through these issues between these 2 bodies and exploring what that looks like. The other one is just conversation with the transportation cabinet or elected officials about traffic studies and local solutions related to those traffic issues. Those are the only 2 action items that I heard and that I captured. So if there's anything else that you would like to document tonight, or if we need more discussion to come up with action items, we should probably do that.
That's actually what I wrote down. I wrote a traffic study. So that's our elected officials to see what I wrote down traffic studies, because we're all kind of on a board with traffic studies, all of us are. So on that, we need to figure out what we can do with that, where we can go with that, who it is that we need to talk to find out how we can make that change on that. And then the other one I have was reviewing zoning ordinance and committees. And then the third thing was that for the city council, then at the next meeting, for us to have a discussion on the agenda for how we will perceive to go forward. So that's the 3 things I have down.
And Brad, I think I hear what you're saying about identifying the problems, but I think if we're going to if we're going to put together a committee to look at every single one of these items, that we're going to address those problems. And when we decide which ones to do first, second, or third, when we have this committee, yeah, they would prioritize. I would hope that that's what they would do. Yeah. So does that cover it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so maybe the homework is we look at the matrix and you prioritize yourself, and then we bring that back and have that conversation and see where the priorities fall, to see if we are all in agreement or if we need to adjust some things. And
You all do it on your end, and the city council does it on our end. And then we would, when this is put together, there's probably 2 people that would take what we decided in city council to this committee and represent. And then you all would have your 2, and maybe they'll be the same ones. Who knows? And if they're not, decide which ones you're going to deal with first. And is that?
yeah, and I think we ought to share between the 2
Yeah,
bodies to make
absolutely.
sure, see where we're aligned and where we're not.
And
if
do this
not.
every quarter or so, bring the whole thing together every 4 months or something.
Kumbaya.
That's a good idea, Brad.
That keeps the ball rolling, that's what happens. We all go home, we get this, we go like, oh, I don't know how that's going.
Brad was right again.
Well, and one thing that was mentioned was the steering committee appearance. We have sat in here at planning and zoning meetings and had this chamber packed, and people out in the hall and in the meeting room across the hall, and I'm sure you all have had the same thing, that they're just totally irate about something that's happened, but yet we couldn't get any of these people to serve on the comprehensive plan committee. That's when we need those people's input, when they're so upset about something, back in the planning stages, not at the final stage. So we need to reach out to members of the community that raise a lot of hell from time to time to be on this committee, so that we get their input on the front end, not on the back end. So put those out there, and any of those people that come to your meetings and raise Cain with you, invite them to be on the steering committee.
I agree with you, Charlie. Regarding the comp plan, we all get a lot of citizens talk to us about it. And I mean, I get quite a few each week, and we definitely have to remember it's a guide and not a mandate.
Yeah.
And I've even had some citizens come to me and say, who is on the comp plan committee? And they find out that, some of us are on it. And then when it comes forward to be implemented, it feels more like a mandate because, some of them feel there's a conflict of interest with some of us being on that. And then we put it before us. Well, of course, we're going to vote on it. We were there,
to approve it.
putting it together. So, that may not be a legal conflict of interest, but to many people, it violates the spirit of it.
Yeah.
But that's just their opinions. But yeah, reaching out and having more people involved in that would definitely help, and just continuing to remember that it is a guide and not a mandate.
Charlie, the one thing I'd just follow up on that, as we develop those kinds of steering committees and folks are selected to represent, and there's an obligation that goes with that. So making sure that you're having those ongoing dialogues with the folks that you're representing and getting their feedback to be able to bring that in and keeping them in the loop for that. I think, sometimes we get busy and we're not able to maybe do it as effectively as we want to, but we have to make sure that we're doing it so that we truly can represent those areas, whether it be business, the council, the court, the planning, whatever group that you're representing in that committee. So
I want to compliment Holden and staff on the reaching out for the public outreach. You all have done more here recently, and it's very noticeable. The breakfast with the planner, picnic with the planner, and you're going to the schools and everything, and I love that. That's what gets people involved, and because it's their community. That's the kind of outreach, because you're going to have to do it, because God knows they're not going to come to the meetings unless it's something they don't want to see. So that gets that out there, and I just want to compliment them for the job they're doing on that.
All right. Again, so we have some action items to do here and for next time, and I guess we can figure out, once we get this started, and thank you, Emily, for that, and Devin, and all the rest of the staff, and Holden, and those of you all that are here tonight. Again, it was a good conversation, and at least we got some direction to go. And like I said, let's start today. It's always the best thing to start, and appreciate your being here. And that being said, this meeting is adjourned.